Hello everyone, welcome to Sentinel. Now we've all heard of Lawarence of Arabia. Either we've seen the movie or read the book. Now Lawarence was a very prominent figure in the history of the Middle East because he spent a lot of time with the Sharif of Mecca and really understood how the Arabs thought and what their cultural values and mores were. Similar to Lawarence, we have other individuals that have spent a lot of time in Afghanistan and really understand the Afghan culture and the Afghan people. And one such person is Tim Lynch. Tim is a retired Marine officer, a friend of mine that I've served with, and a phenomenal individual. He spent about 7 years in Afghanistan in total, and really has a deep understanding of the Afghan people. He initially started out guarding the US Embassy in Afghanistan, and then went to Jalalabad and owned and operated a guest house with a bar. Then he started work for JICA, which is the Japanese International Cooperation Agency, and also CADG, which is Central Asia Development Group. And subsequently, he started working in southern Afghanistan with the US Marines down there as a civilian, and got involved in various water projects to help with the irrigation systems in southern Afghanistan. He's got an incredible reputation, incredible insights into Afghanistan and the Afghan people. When I used to go in and out of Afghanistan after I retired from the Marine Corps, I used to always hear about Tim, and a couple of times we crossed paths in country. So really, I'm really proud to have him on this show, and we'll see how it goes. Maybe we'll have multiple episodes, just like we did with Colonel C.J. Douglas. And I think it's important to talk about Afghanistan and capture all these lessons and experiences that our people have, because eventually we're going to go back. And for the next generation to be able to reach into these interviews and learn the lessons that we did, and hopefully they won't repeat the same mistakes that we have. So it's important that we talk about this. Tim is also a prolific writer. He writes for Substack and LinkedIn and is currently working on a book. So I look forward to that coming out. And he's also got a website called Free Range International, where he puts up articles talking about his experiences in Afghanistan, and also discussions about current events that he has very good insights in. So before I leave, at the end, please don't forget to hit a like, share, subscribe, and leave some comments for Tim and I to read and respond back. So on that note, let's dig into it and talk to Lynch of Afghanistan. Welcome to the Sentinel podcast, Tim. It's great seeing you. It's been many years, and I look forward to our discussions on Afghanistan. And the viewers, if you remember the series we did with Colonel C.J. Douglas, it just so happens that Tim was his instructor at the infantry officers course. And perhaps when he tells us his origin story, he can kind of weave that in so the viewers can get that feel of his relationships with many infantry officers that I served with in the Marine Corps. We used to talk about him. So he's fairly renowned throughout the Marine Corps. And after the Marine Corps, he's very renowned because he spent a lot of time in Afghanistan, more than anybody else that I know, far more than I did. I believe he spent 7 years. And I wanted to just pick his brain and have the viewers listen to him and how he interacted with the Afghans. It's important stuff, and this is something we need to capture for future generations, because we're going to end up going back there again eventually. And more so, we're going to be dealing with many other foreign countries, and some of the experiences that he brings to the table are, in my opinion, are priceless, because we can learn from that. And these aren't written in any books. Although Tim is a prolific writer, he writes many articles that I've read with great interest. But these experiences, and for him to be able to verbalize it's very important. So Tim, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me on. I'm really happy to be here talking with you.
Yes, sir. So what I'd like to do is just start and tell the viewers about your backstory, your origin story, and then we can get into the Afghanistan part of it. Please go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I was born in Honolulu, Hawaii, because my father was a Marine. My dad's a retired infantry officer. He retired as a CG of Parris Island. And although raised by a Marine, mostly in Marine Corps bases, I'd say half between bases and half in Annapolis, Maryland. After high school, in which I was not exactly a great student, I joined the Navy because I wanted to be a SEAL. And this is 1978 now. This isn't before SEALs had a rep. It's only because I had heard about them from other dependents who talked about them like they're the baddest of the bad. I'm like, Huh. So I signed a 6-year contract to guarantee I could get into past my entry level school into an advanced school. The whole time my recruiter knowing I'm colorblind, never going to pass a dive physical ever. So I ended up being a medical laboratory technician in the Navy for 6 years, and I was not happy with that. But I did my job, and I learned a lot. And I was deployed as part of a medical augmentation team to Beirut after the bombing. So I actually got a chance to get out and see the Marine Corps in the field. And I never felt worse about myself than standing on that stupid ship, looking through the big eyes, watching firefights on shore, because I felt like I'm a bench warmer, man, and I'm not a bench warming kind of guy. I felt like I need to be into the fight. So when I finished my enlistment and finished college, I was in OCS 6 months after I left the Navy because I'd been going to night school. Um, Fortunately for me, a happenstance when we went through TBS, you're competing for your MOS, and I ended up unintentionally at the top of the middle third. So I got infantry officer, which was not easy to do in the 80s, and went out to the fleet, 1st Marine Regiment. I was in 19, the Walking Dead, a very famous battalion. We were the first MEU SOC battalion on the West Coast. So we had extra money, enhanced training, all these things, and I loved it. I was augmented after being augmented into the regular services and still keeping my infantry MOS. I went back to TBS. I did a warrant officer class, um, which was tough on those warrant officers. I didn't know what I was doing. I just noticed that they were out of shape, so well, they lost so much weight in my platoon. But it set me up for a good TBS class, Fox Company, mainly ROTC and Academy grads. And from there, I was brought directly into IOC, and I stayed in the infantry officers course for 2.5 years as an instructor, and I loved it. It's my favorite time in the Marine Corps.
When were we commissioned? What year was that? 86?
I was commissioned in 1985. It would have
Okay.
been 12th of December, 85.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. Mhm.
So, and then
And so
you were back to IOC when, or TBS?
I was back at TBS in 90.
Okay.
I transferred in there in summer of 90, basically 9 months as a TBS staff platoon commander, and then right to IOC, um, which was fortunate. You earn your way on the IOC by
Oh,
by
yeah.
picking up and assisting other companies when you don't have to. And excuse me, I was always in the field with the other companies, and that's how you get on IOC
Tell
is
the
by.
viewers a little bit about IOC because most people aren't familiar with it. Everybody knows about Ranger School and Buds and all
Mm,
that, and I think it's right up there at that tier, that level of intensity and
oh,
training. I mean, I found it extremely hard and challenging, and
it it is, I think, acknowledged the best entry level course for infantry officers in the world. Um, we had during those 90s, the SEALs try to get in because they were being forced to get other schooling, having had problems in Grenada and Panama, which is they were sending SEALs to Ranger School, and the SEALs would lose all this weight, and they hated it. And they tried to get into IOC. Major Allen, retired General Allen, didn't allow it. We had the Army infantry officers course guys come over and watch one of our live ambushes in which we, clacked off real claymores and shot real machine guns, and they were right in front of these Army guys, had no idea they were there. They couldn't believe it. There was so much going on in that course that I just loved it. And the vast majority of the instructors who were there with me retired as general officers, the vast majority. And I just couldn't have been a happier camper than when I was at OC. And I believe when you talk to men like C.J. Douglas, they remember the experience fondly.
how was
And
he as a student?
and
How was CJ as a
yeah, yeah.
student?
Apparently, I didn't know this, but we've been communicating since your podcast. I let him go for a weekend to get married. I must have been he must have been an incredibly proficient student for me to
Right.
grant him that kind of clemency.
I think the experience that we went through just produced a different type of Marine officer, infantry officer, as opposed to the ones that, came out during your time. Because I believe I
Hmm.
was a company commander, so I was at the receiving end of these
Hmm.
types of infantry officers. They're definitely smart officers. I mean, they knew a lot on the technical side, but I think on the
Hmm.
leadership side, in terms of how to push Marines, beyond their limits safely. I think they were sort of not hesitant, but they sort of shy away from pushing them beyond their limits.
And to tell you the truth, I never thought of that. But no, the, the other thing was technical proficiency. Man, I thought I was a great platoon commander. My Marines loved me, the battalion loved me and whatnot, but I wasn't, because all I knew of my Marines was what they were as Marines. This is where we went short at IOC. And I know, Jeff, I think this has been corrected. We didn't spend enough time knowing them as people. And I wasn't interested in them as people. I didn't care. And that was stupid. I didn't learn that until as a company commander, that you needed to start paying a little bit more attention to these kids' backgrounds and what was going on when they're not with you. But that never occurred to me as a lieutenant. Everything was Marines in the field, because that's all I knew.
So, the reason I bring it up is, let's extrapolate that a little bit, because in combat, you don't get to rest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sustained
Right.
combat, and
Right.
you just got to keep going, and you mentally you get tired, and you got to work through that. I remember the 4 months that we had sustained combat in Afghanistan. The longest I slept was 2 hours, 2 hour segments,
Yeah.
right? And I doze off during the day, but you're always listening to the radio. There's a rhythm you establish. Now, over time, obviously, that degrades your capabilities as a commander and as a leader. But I think in the harsh reality of combat, to push your Marines, it's a different type of mindset. And my sense is, and having seen that later on when I was a battalion commander, I think the Marine Corps culture changed in how we trained our officers. I think that old Vietnam generation that trained us, and it was basically, harsh tactics they taught us and how to push through things, was probably replicated combat more so than this new type of training that we're doing, where you could, it's this gummy bear. I call it the gummy bear type of training, right?
And I always thought this was the smartest thing we did. It never occurred to me. I never led Marines in combat, though.
Yeah.
So that may be why I never saw that, because the closest I came was pushing them at the end of a CAX. That's exactly what, 72 hours. Not hard,
Yeah.
That's a very good point.
I remember getting thrashed. I mean, physically get beat up in IOC by instructors. Because you did some goofball thing. Muzzle awareness or whatever. They're smacked the crap out of you.
Oh yeah, they were hands on. I remember that. We lost a machine gun when we were getting spy rigged out of the patrolling exercise, and Logston was the AI.
Logston beat the crap out of me. I mean, and I say it proudly. I mean, I love the guy, and I remember we were doing qualifying for, F1 for the motor shoot, and prac day, I bounced one off a tank. So I thought I was pretty shit hot. Well, qual day, I'm coming up with these adjustments that are not on the card. You remember the old cards that we had?
I remember.
And I'm just making up numbers. And he kind of, I remember his eye, he kind of had like one eyeball that was and he kind of like, what the hell are you doing, Genghis? So I told him, and he freaking turned around and smacked me. My helmet goes flying off. And he's like, you dumb shit. That's not a sniper rifle. It's an area weapon. Learn to use it. It's got a frag pattern, And I'll tell you what, 20 years later, I was at 10,000 feet in Afghanistan with troops in contact, calling in a JDAM from a B1, and they were about 200 meters in elevation. The enemy position was 400 meters apart. It's beyond, they refused to drop because it was beyond danger close, right? And all I remember was a frag pattern. So we're talking to the pilot, what's the frag pattern of this ordnance? And he said, go straight up. And bingo, because we had a 200-meter elevation separation and 400 meters away. And if the frag pattern goes up, we're okay. And I assumed responsibility, and it went all the way back to the KAOC and Cutter, who refused to drop it. And legend has it that I said, talking to Major, that, hey, MF, if you don't give permission, I will find you and I'll kill you. Because, I got troops in contact. That's and then some one-star comes on and we talk through it. I said, I'm the senior man. I got troops in contact and this is the only aircraft available, blah, blah, blah. We need to drop. And he gives permission. Then the pilot says, I can't drop because the separation. And because of Logsdon, 20 years later, my brain engaged and I'm like frag pattern, and we ended up dropping and ended up, taking out something like 30 some people with that one JDAM. So, and I think that type of intense training, if it was just this book type of learning training, and I know, I know Kelly well, and I know Alan well, served with both, and I know the type of officers they were, they're more scholastic, sporadic method of training. Yeah.
Cerebral is the polite way.
Yeah, and they're, a lot of reading. And one of my things, and I mean, we can take this discussion there if you'd like, is I think there was a time in the Marine Corps right after you and I, got commissioned and went through IOC where everybody just started reading everything. And then guys like Mattis came along and said, I have a library of 3,000 books, and everybody idolized Mattis and said, oh shit, I'm going to get one for 3,500 books if that's what makes you successful. So everybody went out there and started reading. And then Al Gray comes along and, with the Commandant's reading list, but his intent wasn't to turn us into bookworms. His intent was, hey, understand history, apply it, but not at the lieu of training. And then all of a sudden, I remember as a lieutenant, I was out there every day with my Marines doing something, right? And then all of a sudden, the culture became that, hey, the lieutenant's got to be in the office and the staff NCOs handling them, and you stay away from the Marines and all this horse shit, in my opinion. And what it was everybody's reading books and everybody's writing Gazette articles and all that stuff. And I think we just went off the wrong track, quite frankly, because a platoon leader, I mean, I remember we used to be called platoon leaders in those days. We weren't called platoon commanders, right? Because you're not a commander. You don't have NJP authority. You're a leader. Right. The company commander has NJP authority. So that's a big distinction. And as a platoon leader, you were expected to be out there and lead. And if you remember your first platoon in 19, did you have a platoon sergeant? What rank was he?
Sergeant. I got a staff sergeant eventually. I eventually got a staff sergeant right before we pumped onto the ship.
Right. I had a corporal as a platoon sergeant. I mean, there were dregs in those days, if you remember. We had drug problems. We had alcohol.
The only reason I got we were the MUSAC guys, so we got plussed up with personnel at the last minute.
You took all the good guys. Yeah, so I think part of the problems was, we changed the way we were training. We wanted officers to be more sporadic, and you really can't be. Sometimes you got to be, you got to drive Marines. I remember my instructors bringing us back from a field evolution, and you know where the armory was, and there was a helicopter LZ, like a football type field next to it, if you remember. Right? And we thought we were done. They'd take us down there and thrash us. We would do squad rushes up and down that damn field, till God knows when, till they were satisfied, And their purpose was, that was the movement to contact phase. This is the attack phase, right? So, and that was intense training. I mean, I loved it. I absolutely loved it, And I took that mindset to the, Fleet Marine Force, when I was in 1-7, 1-2, 1-6. I mean, that's the way we trained. I mean, there was no, when it came to training, it was intense. And I used to tell the Marines, I'm going to train you harder than combat. I promise you that. And I think I lived up to it, and that's important, I think. And unfortunately, it was tough to bring the younger officers up to that level because they just weren't conditioned that way. They thought, this guy's a madman, but it wasn't. That's the way I was taught. I mean, I was just recently talking to my 1st Battalion commander, Wild Bill Simone. And the first time I met him, when I checked into 1-7, I meet the XO and he's like, hey, 12 o'clock, you're going to meet the battalion commander about the pull-up bars and PT gear. And luckily I brought my PT gear with me, right, when I checked in. And so, I show up at the pull-up bar and meet the battalion commander. He takes me on a 5-mile run and thrashes the crap out of me. And what I found out was through the lieutenant's network was, if you don't stay up with him, you ain't getting a platoon. He's going to stick you in some staff jobs, so you better stay up with him. Luckily, I could always run. I was gifted in that regard.
Exactly the same thing to me in 19. It was the battalion XO, Russ Howard, old recon guy.
Yeah.
A big cigar smoker.
Yeah.
I go in a report. He goes, go down. We had to buy the shirt at the exchange, a 19 shirt.
Yeah.
He said, come back at noon, be ready to run. And Russ Howard was no sloucher. That was a long run, but I had no problem keeping up with him. And everybody that was a platoon commander could keep up with him, and the other ones were in the S3 shop. That's exactly what happened in our battalion too.
Yeah, that was that. You know, I know who was the battalion commander one night in those days.
It was Kelly. It was a guy named Jim Kelly. He wasn't a very dynamic guy. I hardly remember
Yeah,
him. And then he was replaced by Dave Mize,
yeah.
yeah, you probably know Mize real well. He was his brother-in-law and was your meth commander. Yeah.
Now think about this. You know, when I checked into 7th Marines as a second lieutenant, and you have to go see the regimental commander, and I walk in, and it's JJ Vargas. You know, Medal of
Oh,
Honor
no
recipient.
way.
Yeah, I mean, so you know, I mean, and you know, these are people you
Yeah.
hear about. You know, and it's mind blowing
Yeah.
stuff. And the bar all of a sudden just went from here to up there, right?
Yeah.
And he was always around, you know, checking on our regimental's chow halls and all that stuff that we had in those days. And it was just a different level of intensity. I mean, they would call you from the regimental CP, you know, randomly pick a platoon, you know, Bravo Company 3rd Platoon, be at the regimental CP in an hour for regimental commander's inspection. You get 1 hour to get ready.
Ooh.
You know, that means go down to the
Ooh.
armory, draw your weapons, march the Marines up there, and make sure everything's clean. You don't have time to do anything. So you always have to be ready,
Mm-mm.
right? And that type of stuff really, you know, kept us disciplined and focused, I think. And it was,
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved being a lieutenant. And in fact, you know, I had the opportunity to be a platoon commander twice. You know, I was a
Hmm.
platoon commander, fleeted up to be an XO. They brought in a fallen angel, and I voluntarily, you know, I said, hey, I'll go back, no problem. And I loved it. I loved every bit of it. So I think that's important.
I liked it. I liked it too.
What are your views? I mean, since we're talking IOC, and before we close it out, what are your views about women infantry officers and how the Marine Corps went about that?
I think the Marine Corps disgraced itself by gaming this system to force women into the infantry. I don't think the women have any business being anywhere near an infantry organization for any reason whatsoever. I can understand bringing along women for in Muslim lands in order to act as the female engagement teams. I get that, and that's
Yeah.
all. And I guess if you got, particularly if you're in vehicles, that's not going to be a big problem. But I was coming out of Nawa after doing a payday, all hajied up, and I see this patrol coming in, and I could tell the point man is furious. I mean, I'm looking at these Marines. It looks like they're getting ready to get into a fight. I stop my vehicle. I get out. I'm looking. The Fenton Marines are in the back of that formation, no body armor, no weapons, no helmets, hanging on to the Marine in front, stumbling towards the goddamn district administration center. And I'm like, and the Afghans around me are laughing at him. Oh man, that kind of stuff. I've never heard any reports about that in the press or from anybody else. I understand that there are women that could have made that hump and not been a drag. I understand the utility of female engagement teams, but that doesn't mean they need to be in the infantry. That cohesion, that small unit cohesion we spent so much time talking about and trying to develop is ruined when you put a female in there because we're guys. And we're not even nice and polite guys, quite
Yeah.
frankly, at the platoon level. We're not the guys you want to invite into your house for a Thanksgiving dinner. Not a damn Marine Corps rifle platoon, not my platoon.
Yeah, you want to put them through a car wash
No.
before you do.
And yeah, and the way that they interact with each other when they like each other is harassment. Straight up sexual harassment.
Yeah.
I mean, straight up. That's how you know they like it. It's because they're on top of each other's case all it. And the stuff that they would do. Oh my God. But I don't think women have any business being in the infantry at all, period, or anywhere near it. And
The sad part is a lot of our contemporaries felt exactly, you know, what you just said. But later on, as they got promoted to the rank of colonel and higher, they changed their song.
oh, dude, I'm not going to mention names, but I had a
Yeah.
conversation with my best friend about this, and I'm like, he's bragging on this enlisted Marine who said this can box and is the hardest little girl. He said, and I said, buddy, I am 60 years old, and I guarantee you I could strangle the life out of that woman in under 3 minutes. I promise you, there's nothing she could do to stop me.
Yeah.
And I can't say that about a little shrimpy Marine. He might be little and skinny and shrimpy, but that there's no guarantee you're going to be able to choke him out so easy. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. And I would say that for any woman that you get in there, and that ought not be the case. A 60-year-old man should be afraid to tangle with an infantry Marine, not like This is
So
going to
the,
be
so the
nothing.
biggest problem I had with how we started diluting the standards, especially at IOC, trying to get a woman to graduate, and there's several attempts, and I think it was like after the 12th woman went through, one graduated or something like that. And the Marine Corps really hyper focused on it with Amos and the subsequent
Of
commandants.
course.
And then they reduced the loads on the hikes. There was a case where they had to carry between the squad 150 pounds of extra gear that was taken out of the equation, and things of that nature. And to graduate the first woman, and she did, and she's a fantastic officer, I'm sure. But the issue was after that they couldn't get anybody to graduate because they're just breaking down. I mean, it's tough when you're carrying
That's
that load, you
that's
know?
what I was going to say. I knew when I was at Quantico, particularly, several unbelievably fit women that were
Yeah,
lieutenants, that were
yeah,
students there.
yeah, no
One of
doubt.
them, one of them would get in with Don Vito and body spar with him because Don Vito just wanted to see if a woman could take it.
Yeah,
She was a tough girl, etc. But when they started going through the syllabus and started doing long road marches with weight on their back, they invariably got chronic injuries in their hips and
on
knees.
the hips and
They're
knees. Yeah,
not made
yeah,
to carry loads like we carry them. So the women who I would look at you, and because we're talking women that are like bodybuilding women, you look at them and you think, wow, there's no way that she'll probably be able to do it. Well, A, she doesn't want to do it because these were smart women and they weren't interested in being around infantry guys. But B, it's going to cost them in chronic injuries. And I went through an entire career without any kind of chronic injuries. And brother, I've done some humping. I think you
sure.
have too.
Yeah.
I was made to move on the damn road. And that's just a fact. Why would you introduce a segment of the population whose injury rate is going to, and that's expensive to have injured people. We used to be concerned in manpower about T2, P2, training, transfers, prisoners, and patients, because those
Right.
people on your rolls are overhead. They're nothing. That's your fat.
Yeah.
You want to reduce that number. You want those people deploying, doing your job. But your P2, T2 is going jumps with women because you're going to injure them. And there's nothing you can do about that because of the way that their hips and the way that the forces work against their knees. Sublex patellas. Ever see a male with a sublex patella? I saw that at TBS with women too often. And I'm a former corpsman. I know what I'm looking at.
So
And
the
that's a
the
serious injury.
the issue. So what happened was the Marine Corps started saying, okay, these women as second lieutenants are not ready for the challenges of IOC, so we'll allow captains to come from the fleet so they can come back and do the
Did they
IOC, right?
really? Oh,
And there's a couple of them that graduated, but here's the issue with that. Imagine sending a captain to the fleet as a platoon leader, platoon commander, working for another captain as a company commander. It makes no sense, right? It's like being married to your grandmother. And, I don't want to marry my grandmother. So it's just the
mm-mm.
odd things Marine Corps was doing, trying to rationalize and justify, to Dakowitz. And I've talked about Dakowitz on several episodes, to say, hey, we're complying with the wishes of Congress, rather than just having the moral courage. And we can talk about this in later episodes, having the moral courage to say, this is fundamentally wrong. Jim Jones did, Carl Mundy did, right?
Yep.
When they were
Yep.
commandants, they
Yep.
said, hey, this ain't going to work, because they'd been to
That's right.
Vietnam, and they had the moral courage and the backbone to do that. And, then the subsequent commandants kind of from like Hagee onwards, the Marine Corps just start getting this, soft gummy bear leadership style, and especially, with Amos. Now, I don't care for Amos. I don't think Amos was ever a Marine. I think he should
No,
be.
I don't either.
He never
I
went to
didn't
boot. I
like
mean, he
it.
never went to Marine Corps boot camp. Never went to OCS. Never went to TBS. So I don't know how he got his ego golden anchor. I'm about ready to call Don Shipley up, on the Stolen Valor channel and get him checked out. Honestly, I mean, but the point being is these guys diluted the Marine Corps for promotions, and they lacked the moral courage. And and I kind of remember your dad, as a Marine officer, and those guys were men of honor. They had a backbone, and they, regardless of if they were right or not politically, they spoke
Hmm.
their minds. And once the
Hmm.
decision was made, they'd execute. Roger, I mean, that's what we do. But at least they push back. And now what we're
Yeah.
seeing is senior general officers, they don't push back. They just kind of, and the most recent case is putting women drill instructors in male platoons. I mean, think
Yeah.
about that. You know, when you're standing there
It's
getting your ass chewed and you get that whiff of that perfume instead of that onion bread smell, you know, it just sends a recruit's mind somewhere else, right? And
Mhm.
we can't be doing shit like that. And
Yeah.
you know, a lot of the and I did an episode on that subject, and the outcry was unbelievable because a lot of the people, the viewers on this channel are old Vietnam veterans and going all the way back to Korea, and even before that, and they were up in flames. They're like, what the hell's going on in the Marine Corps? And I hope
Yeah.
Pete Hegseth is able to change all this and go back to the basics and the fundamentals. And even in the officer training side, we need to get away from the books, in my opinion. It's important, and I've read all the books, and so have you, but it's important to apply what you've read. And if you're just going to read, you're not going to get there from here. It's like reading Muscle Magazine and thinking you're going to become a bodybuilder, right? It ain't going to happen. You got to get in the gym and push
Yeah.
iron around.
Well, after IOC, out to the fleet, did platoon commander with Charlie 19 helicopter company. We got do a Westpac, come back. I assumed a company command for 8 months, waiting for the next AWS class to graduate and my company commander to arrive. So I was a company commander briefly, well, for months. I mean, NJP authority and everything. It was very cool. Then XO, and so I had a hell of a good run. And I do the next deployment as an XO, come back, go to TBS, IOC, AWS, back to 1-8. 1-8. I 1-8 was not the best. 1-8 was a great battalion, but there was no battalion when I showed up because of that stuff that you were doing down in Gitmo. There was no battalion commander. I think there was other company commanders, but they were out in these pocket deployments. You remember we used to do a company to Westpac
Sure.
and a
Yeah.
company down in Unitas.
Yeah.
That all of our companies were gone. And I show up, and then they took the Force Recon CO, XO, and Sergeant Major in one day, throw them into 1-8 CP, and they walk in, and it was Charles Rushworth is
Yeah.
the CO. And he looked at me, he looked at my book, he goes, "You're the 3." I'm like, "So I come on, man, you gotta be kidding me." But I was the 3. So I didn't get a company command. I served as a 3 for as a captain, and which is where I last saw you on active duty, because
In
you
Okinawa.
came over and replaced us in Okinawa
Right.
and graciously let me copy your SOP because I didn't want to have to go back and write one. And
Right.
and I knew that you would never do that. That you would always insist on writing your own SOP. And I knew that you knew that I didn't care because I knew if you wrote it, it was going to be good. So I just changed 1-8 from 1-6, and there you are.
Yeah.
But and I appreciate that. I've been forever grateful. But I did that. I got shifted over to SOTG as a special missions branch guy. I think I replaced somebody, got in trouble. I can't remember why, but I'm not a Force Recon guy. The SOTG special missions branch did close quarter battle, urban sniping, and explosive breacher. That was all classified back in the 90s. This is all classified training. CQB done with MP5s back then. We didn't use the M4s. And so I had a great time, and I used my skills gained under Major Allen about getting permission to do stuff because I was the RSO on every TrueX, which is live fire hostage rescues inside urban cities. So we would do 3 live fire missions. We did Atlanta, New Orleans, Charleston. I think we went to Wheeling, West Virginia once. I mean, we'd go to these cities with the MU commanders, the ACE, the Force Recon Det, and the rifle platoon that the rifle company that goes with the Force Recon guys
Right.
as a covering force. And we'd set up and we'd be hitting these objectives in cities. And I remember we did Mobile, Alabama. When that sniper shot went off, there was 10,000 people in that range fan because it was in downtown during a Friday night. Everybody was partying, and the police had set up cameras and were telling people it's a movie. Because we're hitting this building that used to be a department store, is now a university, that was all windows facing the street.
Right.
So you could see when those guys, you could hear the sniper when he cracked, because there's no suppressors back then. So you hear the sniper
Flashbangs, yeah.
shot. Yeah, you hear the clang when it hits the bullet trap. And then all of a sudden this explosion goes and these flashbangs start going off, and you could see them from the street. And everybody's like, "What's going on?" And, "Oh, it's just a movie. It's just a movie." I mean, that's the kind of stuff we were doing. landing 53s in a Charleston, downtown Charleston, in the middle of the night. That was so much fun. Ah, man, those were the days, bro. I love that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that
after
was funny.
SOTG, then what happened? Was it RSCO?
RSCO.
Yeah.
I was out back. I was out when the 12th Marine Corps District, which is the West, California, all of the West, was leading the recruiting was hard in the 90s. No service was making a mission but the Marines. And the Marines were making mission because the 12th District was over shipping month in and month out. And the guys over shipping, there was only three of us, Paul Kennedy, Dave Furness, and me.
Yeah.
Every month we're over shipping, covering other guys. And I had a great time, but I had a little incident with my district commander. I know to this day I was right, but I said, you know what, fine, I'll get out.
Where was your RS station at?
Salt Lake City. So I had Montana, the crappy slices of Wyoming and Nevada, and all of Idaho, except for the very western tip of Idaho, which belonged to Tacoma. So I had the largest geographical
25% of the
station.
United States land-wise, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And I don't recall being home much. I stayed on the road, and my recruiters had no idea where the hell I was going to show up, because the driving distance between my substations was often 12 hours. I mean, Billings, Montana,
Yeah.
Butte, Montana. That's a drive, bro. That's a drive.
You didn't drag any homeless people, did you?
Yeah, I did. I was driving in Boise with Gunny Gonzalez, who a career recruiter, and we see this kid pushing a Apache cart underneath the an overpass. It's raining. It's winter.
Yeah.
This kid's sitting there struggling. Gunny stops. He goes, "That fucking kid's a football star. Hold on," because he knew Mormon. The kid had refused to go on mission. His father had thrown him out of the house. He walks up, and I get out. I got to listen to this. Gunny goes, "Hey, you got your high school diploma in there?" He goes, "Yes, sir." "Got a birth certificate?" "Yes, sir." "Social security card?" "Yes, sir." "All right, get in the car. You're going to be a Marine." And that was it. That was it. Now we had to find a place to stash the kid till we could get him to boot camp.
Yeah.
Which we did through different recruiters' houses. The kid was an honor grad and became an officer. Kid was an honor grad.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
He was a good kid. But that was Gonzalez, knowing that from who's in Boise, recognizing a kid from the Friday Night Football fan. That was the only reason.
Yeah, that's just
that.
knowing
those guys
your population.
Would be bums.
Yeah.
I
remember, down in the drill field. I mean, I did like 15 cycles down in the trenches, and I loved it. End of the month, shippers, we didn't want them.
Oh yeah, no.
We stayed away from
the
that
bottom
stuff.
of the barrel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it was fun. I mean, it was good. And I'll tell you what, I loved the drill field. I absolutely loved it. It was just such pristine, innocent. That pure Marine Corps motivation, idealism. It was just fantastic. Great environment. Graduations were actually, an emotional moment. And I'll tell you why, because you get attached to these young, recruits, and it's not until the last week that we start treating them like human beings, right? And things loosen up a little bit. And but the first 3 weeks are just, I mean, I remember young recruits pissing all over themselves, because they'd have to sit on the floor and these guys would pee all over. I mean, it's just, but, and then you see them develop and, some of them lose 30, 40 pounds. And it's easy to break a Marine, but it's difficult to make a Marine, right? And that was the whole thing you have to teach a drill instructor. I told the drill instructor, I said, I'd break you. And and I used the same, and I was, in fact, telling Colonel Simone yesterday in an email, my first battalion commander, I used his methodology down in the drill field. So if a drill instructor screwed up, he's walking that line, and I know if he's not corrected, he's going to do something stupid. I'd tell him, hey, meet me by the pull-up bars in PT gear. And I'd take him for a run down to, San Diego Harbor, which was, 7-8 miles there and back. And I'd take a, $5 bill with me in San Diego Harbor. We'd stop. I'd buy him a ice pop. And that's when the consult would happen, Yeah, I'm hearing this, and I expect you to do this. And if you don't do that, we will do this run every freaking day till you fix yourself. You hear me? And it worked. Because one, that I'm not going to bring him in and write or do a counseling sheet, and it just pisses him off too. but he knew there's a cost associated with it. And this guy is crazy enough to run you every day to San Diego Harbor, and it worked. I mean, I never. And my greatest pride was down at the drill field. You know, I mean, they claim I graduated over 5,000 recruits. Was I never lost a drill instructor, and I never covered anything up.
That's impressive.
Yeah,
that's impressive.
I never covered anything up, but I was always there to make sure. You know, I figured as long as I'm there, they're not going to do anything stupid. That's the first part. And it takes time to build credibility and trust, right? Because a lot of officers will be peeking in windows trying to catch them, and they take pride. Oh, I caught 3 drill instructors. You know, I've got 5 on my record. Well, that's bullshit. That's not leadership, right? That's just being a cannibal and eating your own. Leadership requires you to be there, and especially shit would happen typically on the parade deck. You know, the drill meant everything to drill instructors, and that's when the handout stuff would go and you get that smack or something, you know, stupid. So I'd just be out there for, you know, when they were practicing drill, and I'd just stand in the corner of the parade deck kicking rocks. You know, when I was a company commander, I'd send an officer out there, and it just kept them, you know, safe. The drill instructors, and everybody graduated. You know, and I loved it. I loved the training part of it. I loved, you know, taking the recruits up to, you know, weapons training battalion, doing the rifle range, and then from there humping up to, you know, Northern Camp Pendleton. I'm trying to think. That was San Onofre.
That was San Onofre, yeah.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah, right now, because I was down in Horno. That's what First Marines was.
And I'll tell you, we had this one kid who was just fat, dumpy little kid, and the drill instructors just thrashed this. They hated him. And I told the drill instructors, we're going to carry him until 3rd phase. You know, 3rd phase is when we'll decide if we can. And they just torched this kid, you know. And he made it, you know, by the skin of his teeth, 3rd phase. He, you know, passed everything and he made it. And the drill instructor's really pissed off at me. Sir, that he should have never graduated. I said, listen, he meets the standards, he's graduating. Next cycle, we go up to San Onofre to do our field portion, and I see somebody running up Mount Mother F, you know, Don, boots and utes. And it's this recruit, PFC Ramirez. And he came to see his drill instructors. The irony of it, right? And I told the drill instructors, I said, let me tell you something. I wouldn't have done that for the Commandant of the Marine Corps. Put my boots and utes on and run up here from San Onofre, you know, to San Mateo side to come see.
That's a long run.
Yeah, that's a motivation, right? And he just wanted to show his drill instructors that he was, you know, slightly better, right? But that's the type of people you want. And yeah, it was fantastic. I loved it. So you get out of the Marine Corps.
I get out of the Marine Corps. I applied. This was 2003 or 4. I applied to every private military contractor I could find online. I was called within 48 hours from a guy in London. 3 days after that, I was on my way to Iraq, and I was a contractor. And I did that for the next 12 years. Just about.
Was that security or what?
Yeah, I did the American Embassy Guard Force, which
in Iraq.
In Baghdad, right? In Baghdad, not a hard job because it was all Nepalese. The Nepalese were pretty squared away and they had their own internal chain of command. My job consisted of inspecting the stations along the river there and making sure that they're manned like they're supposed to be, and submitting justifications for increased manpower. That's how you get popular with your employer. Right. So I was always asking for more men for the State Department, but it was a very easy job. We lived within the compound. We ate there and stuff like that. And my company, the British company, was given the bridging contract for the American Embassy in Kabul, not the formal contract, the bridging contract. And so in February of 2005, I flew into Kabul, and that job was completely different than Baghdad. No living in the compound, no eating State Department defects, none of that stuff. We had to live on a crappy, unfinished compound off of Jalalabad Road with no standoff and a public truck parking lot that backed against our barrack walls. I mean, it was unbelievably stupid to put Commonwealth personnel, because anybody could be. Guard supervisors were Americans, Commonwealth, South Africans, Brits, Canadians, Australians, New Zealand. That was it. Those were the supervisors. The guards, in our case, our company, always Nepalese. So you have all these guys that were in this compound that's not even finished, with no standoff, no weapons, no weapons. That's over at the embassy. And everything was everything with the working with the RSO, everything was a hassle. The guy was an absolutely had wanted nothing to do with us, resented losing the Marine Rifle Company that they've had since 2001. And it was a miserable experience. And I got to detest the State Department and those guys because their concern about us, and we're Americans, goddammit. I'm a retired Marine officer.
Yeah.
Their concern for us was zero, zero. When he told me, we're not going to give you the weapons they said is in the contract, that's for the contract winner. I'm like, where do I get the weapons to guard the embassy? I don't know. You're the security company. You figure out. But buying weapons and ammunition in Afghanistan is illegal. So what? So there you go. I mean, it was ridiculous. And so
this was the old chancery. This was the original chancery from 2001.
The old one. This is the old one from 2001. They're in the midst of building the new one. So the new one is built but not occupied. Some of my many of my guard posts weren't even built yet, but I had to have all my guys there at the start of the contract because the contract said it was just stupid, and I resented it bitterly. I think the next time I ran into you, brother, was on that contract. I think I saw you in Kabul, and although I didn't bitch or complain about it to anybody, I thought what was happening was a crime. Because if we had gotten blown up in those barracks with all those dudes, some of whom had rather illustrious military careers in other countries, not that many famous Americans, a few SF guys with me. Imagine what would have happened. You know, you lose 200 friggin' Brits and Americans and Aussie guys for this, like this.
There's got to be unity of effort,
after
right?
Beirut.
I mean, the RSO's responsibility is to provide leadership responsibility for the entire guard force, not just for his own people. You know, and you don't need an RSO like that because the guy's, you know, he's just lacking his.
I was very happy to leave when I had a chance.
Yeah, just as an aside, you know, I opened that embassy. I believe it was November of 2001. I took the Marines in the first artillery battery, and I remember taking the RSOs, different people, and CAT teams from the DSS. And a phenomenal DSS agent who was one of the CAT teams, team leaders, Ivan Ray, and I believe I put him in for an award, which he got. And he was really, I mean, they were fantastic. But RSOs, as you well know, are embassy dependent, right? Some are really shit hot, and it's all based on their background. And typically, a lot of them are former Marines or Army officers.
A lot of them. And I don't, this guy was not, they had two good DSS agents, one of whom was named Tim Sullivan, and that purpose-built barracks that you were talking about that ended up by the airport was named after him. Yeah. Because he left that job and volunteered for Iraq, because not many DSS agents did, and was killed by an IED shortly after he arrived. He was a good dude, former Marine.
Yeah.
I'm very, very short-fused with people who are this friggin' unconcerned about what's right, because what's being done to this guard force is not right. They would not give us water. They said, you got to bring your own water. I'm working for a British company. British companies do not spend a farthing more than they put on paper they will spend. So asking my company for money to buy water, not
that's absurd, you know? I mean, success is building teams. You got to build the right teams, you'll be successful, right? I mean, that's just pure bullshit.
You know what we did? I went down to Camp Phoenix. I said, hey, all your water supply points, those things look like hell. You want us to take that stuff away and you can put new water out? They had, yeah, sure. So we hauled that up and set that up at the embassy.
Gunny Lynch.
What else are you going to do? So I left there in 2006 when it was up and running, and joined as a country manager a company called WSI. This will even made my loathing of the State Department increase. WSI was run by this guy was 450 pounder from sheriff from Florida, who was married to, whose wife was very high up in the State Department. And he thought he had an inside line on how that police would be armed. So he had bought, I think, 1,000 MP5s, and he had stashed. He knew that they were going to force contractors to use U.S. standard electrical gear so they would stop getting electrocuted in the showers they were building and stuff.
Yes.
Remember that problem?
Yes. Yes.
All that problem with the sketchy stuff. So he imported a Home Depot worth of stuff that he thought he could sell to contractors who were building to U.S. standards, not realizing that the Army would just have it built and flown it. So that didn't work out either. And then he also had the contract for the police vehicle maintenance and to build training centers for the Afghan police. And I had guys in Kandahar, Kalat was that name I was looking for that I forgot the other day. Yep. Kandahar, Kalat, Jalalabad.
Yep.
Okay. He didn't pay any of his subcontractors. So they started rioting outside this place. He didn't pay us. After my first month, I never saw a paycheck again. And now I'm sitting here with a woman from England who's my finance guy, two alcoholics from South Africa who could fix trucks but spend all night long drinking, a bunch of Afghan employees, and I've got no money, and I've got people outside rioting. So I start monetizing the MP5s with the other companies, other security companies. All this being grossly illegal. Start monetizing that. And we take the Home Depot and start building out Connex containers, making them into a single man office head type Connex. But every time we finished a container, some guy from DynCorp would show up with a receipt from the owner saying he's got this container. So we were having problems. We finally sold enough without him knowing about it that we got the money to send all these people home. Oh, and in the midst of that, and we also had the contract for the Japanese International Cooperation Agency. And my guy in Kandahar for JICA was an Egyptian. And in the midst of this, the Egyptian turns up at CAF, unconscious and bleeding. My guys tell me he's been poisoned. He goes, I said, what do you mean poisoned? He's throwing up blood. He's at the hospital. I'm like, I wonder how hard it is to get heroin if you're an Egyptian in Kandahar. And that's exactly what it was. I flew in there. This Canadian nurse is like, you better get an ambulance to get him out of here because we're not taking up a bed in the ICU for a friggin' heroin using Egyptian. I'm like, holy smokes. I call up the company. They said, we're going to air ambulance. And I get another call. We haven't paid the air ambulance monthly nut yet. So they won't launch without $200,000. And at that point, I called the RSO. I said, I've got a problem. And immediately, somehow, through the state, they found $200,000 and flew this guy out of there. And I left.
$200,000?
$200,000 for an aerial medevac of an Egyptian that's unconscious on a ventilator. He survived, by the way. He survived. He actually called me, tried to get a job back.
Wow.
Yeah. And so when that happened, I reported to the JICA guy, said, I highly recommend you fire us because this company that's providing your security in Mazar Sharif in Kabul is not trustworthy. But he liked the guys we had in Mazar Sharif in Kabul. And he said, perhaps maybe you guys could start a company and provide our security. So we provided him a bid. We were so under in the money that they increased our bid because they said, that's not enough money. And so I started my own company that lasted until we decided to expand into the drug and bomb dog business, and we lost our shirt. The Afghans were not interested in purchasing a drug dog that could find drugs. They wanted a drug dog that could detect 1 gram. And we say, look, if you train it to detect 1 gram, when it hits a ton, it won't even alert. It's looking for the 1 gram particle. You can't do that. 1 gram is all we want. So we lost our shirts. We had to fucking euthanize those dogs. It was hard.
How many dogs do you have?
Dozen. I had a dozen. Had to euthanize them. At the time, I had been blogging already because I'm noticing things. I had gone to Jalalabad to take care of the Japanese down there because we couldn't afford to hire a guy. And I had obtained the Taj Mahal guest house, which the UN guys had before me, which came with an in-ground pool and a tiki bar that they had built. But the Australian guys, the road building crew that worked the UN building roads down into, they built one. Well, they built them in all the bad places, all through Sherazad, all the nasty places down in near the Parrot Speak there. They got in trouble for financial irregularities, and suddenly had to abandon the place in like 30 days. And this is like a week after I had moved in, and I was left with this place. I'm by myself. I'm like, I got 3 Japanese experts and me. We can't afford this place. I don't know what I'm going to do. Um, and then these two characters. The first night I was by myself, these two characters show up. You're not gonna believe this. They're playing music. They got rum. They've got the bar open. I only opened the bar on Thursday. I didn't drinking that damn thing. I was by myself. And I walk in, I go, "Ooh, who are you guys?" They said, "We're from the government. We're here to help." So that became a DARPA contractor named Synergy Strike Group, who facilitated the involvement of the most effective Reconstruction people I've ever seen.
Right.
The Golden Triangle La Jolla Rotary Club, San Diego's sister cities, these people were serious. And they bought in a fabrication laboratory from MIT with all the gears. And they bought all this stuff in. Thank God the fabrication thing came with a generator, because I lost my generator when the UN pulled out. I mean, we went through the winter. We didn't have nothing but those Bukhari heaters, which I wouldn't allow in the rooms after 9 o'clock because of how many people would die from the. Yeah. So yes. I made them take the Bukhari. I sent my guys in. Bukhari heaters come out of the rooms at 9. The Japanese guys were so upset because it was freezing. But so slowly, I developed the bar. I'm keeping the bar going by driving up to warehouse and buying beer and wine and driving back on Fridays in the morning before NDS gets their checkpoints set up. When I figure it's the safest place to go. And I'm doing this by myself, but there's no other way to keep the bar going. And I'm getting 70, 80 people on the weekdays. We get all kinds of information from these outlying regions about what's going on out there. That's what the Synergy Strike Force was there for, was to gather information. We become the most popular damn Americans you've ever seen in Jalalabad. I get picked up by CADG doing reconstruction work. And CADG, not a USAID contractor, Central Asia Development Group, American-owned, husband and wife team, former SF guy, owns it, named Steve Scholas. We're direct implementers. So no armored vehicle, no expat security team, no enhanced safety features compound, no safe room, no comms, no nothing. Because USAID contractors have to meet UN MOS, minimum occupational security standards, and that we called B7 armor, 24/7 radio monitoring. We had none of that. Local clothes, local vehicles, don't talk English too much outside the compound. I've got 5,000, 6,000 guys a day doing work. And I mean, we're out there. And so we get very popular very quick. I mean, that place was I just enjoyed the hell out of it. And we were going gangbusters until I had my son tend a bar there. Oh my God. And my son was teaching classes in high school till 2010. And then the security situation tanked. It just tanked. And it wasn't safe to be doing that anymore. And so within the space of about 8 months, it went from a high on the hog to losing Linda Norgrave. She was one of our clients, and that was hard. I mean, I knew her well, and right after we lost Linda Norgrave, and we were ramping down there, my boss said, "Why don't you go down to Leatherneck?" Because me and him had already gone in and talked to General Nicholson when he arrived. I went to the G9 and said, "I got $20 million. What do you want me to do? And you got anything in particular that you want to be done in Nimrods? Because I like Zaranj. I like Kareem Abdul-Berhawi, the mayor down there. Yeah. And I'm fixing to go down there and do every irrigation system in that province." He goes, you can't do that. I said, "We've already done one. I think I'm going to get it done." And we went and we threw all of our money to Zaranj, all of it. And we reconditioned every major irrigation system in that province in the space of 2 years. And Jesus, was that, oh my God, hauling equipment through the desert of death in the middle of summer with Afghans who never do preventive maintenance, who never ride with water into vehicles, who just will get stranded and will be sitting there at the 120-degree heat, just kind of curious as to what's going to happen next. I mean, God, the amount of supervision of just dog and cat herding. Because I was the only Westerner out there. My provincial manager was an Afghan. He was the best ever. He was the best provincial manager ever. But I finally got permission to bring on another American, a former army, a Russian Jew from New York, who had been an army SIGINT guy, but obviously fluent in Russian. And if you're fluent in Russian, man, you can get along in Afghanistan. They have no problem with Russians. They like Russians. When you talk to them in Russian, they get all animated and stuff. They got no issues because the Russians didn't live in compounds separated from the people. The Russians didn't treat them like a different species of human. The Russians, when they were off duty, were in the bazaar spending their money. This is the stuff the Afghans never understood about us. So I finally got another guy to help me do some supervising and at least had some companionship out into the deserts there as we got done. But we got everything done. But when I opened the irrigation system, the check dam stopped the flow of the Helmand River to Iran. Not intentionally. There was work going on CADG, so the flow was already reduced. I didn't know that.
Right.
Nobody told me. I probably should have known. I didn't know. But I'm looking, I'm like, we go to open the thing, and I'm looking, and there's no water after it. I'm like, oh, I said, I asked the governor, I said, Governor Ben Howard, where's the intake for Iran? He goes, 20 miles that way. I'm like, oh, shoot, man. So, but because I was working for the G9, who was a federal prosecutor from Baltimore, I can't remember his name. He said, I called him up and I said, hey, sir, this is going to be a problem. I'll send you the pictures, but we got an issue. And he goes, is that in your plan? I said, yes, sir. Did you add on to the height of your check dam? I said, no, sir. It's exactly as we planned. He goes, CADG dam's being worked on. I think they've reduced the flow. I said, oh my God. He goes, listen, anybody calls you, you tell them to call me, because everybody called me. I mean, I was catching grief about that forever.
Right.
But I had a good run. But then it was over, you know. Then it was over, and there was not much to do but come home.
So what were some of the challenges, I mean, that you experienced in your 7 years now in Afghanistan? I mean, I'm kind of keeping track of it. Yeah.
Yeah, 7 years. I did not understand the culture when I arrived, but I was able to glom onto it pretty quickly. You know, as we were talking about your background, and this one term came up to me when I was listening to you talking to CJ, and that's nobody fears treachery like the treacherous. And the treacherous people I dealt with were in the American embassy. My job and the people I dealt with, and I dealt with guys that were not crystal clean. I dealt with guys that were probably not our definition of good men or what have you, but they were by the local standard. I found that if I, one, would show up there, just showing up, not escorted by a bajillion friggin' armed people, just showing up in a shower camise by myself, willing to break bread, sleep in their friggin' compounds if they invite me to, eat with them, whatnot, sit down, tell them what I'm going to do, ask them for help in these different areas, and promise them this will be done on time. When I started delivering stuff on time, there was nowhere I could go in Southwest Afghanistan where people didn't know who I was before I got there. Yeah. And I heard your name. I heard your name in Kandahar for similar reasons, for a guy that had a reputation for doing what the hell he said he was going to do. Because as anybody familiar with our Reconstruction effort in Afghanistan, most projects were never completed, some never even built, all of them horribly done. It was just the level of supervision was non-existent because none of the USAID contractors or personnel would leave safe areas to go and inspect these things. We had a monthly meeting with the governor of Helmand, and in the 14 months I lived in Lashkar, out of 14 meetings, I was the only one there in 10 of them, because the other ones would decide it's too risky to move remote from the and move. We're talking 2 miles straight shot down a road. We're not talking a sophisticated movement here. It's a straight shot down the road. I couldn't believe it. I was embarrassed. And so learning how to deal with the Afghans, and I don't say it was hard for me to be relaxed and trustful around them, because I had no choice. I did a food assessment survey in the winter of 2000, I don't know, it's 2005, 2006, where I drove the Herat, drove to Chachachran. I tried to make it up in the Daikundi, but the snow wouldn't let me. Drove to Kuala now, drove all these places. Every place I went, I found more wheat than you could shake a stick at. All of it marked a gift from the people of Canada to the people of Iran, which I thought was kind of humorous. And but I did this food assessment survey, but I had to sleep on the ground in tea houses, in compounds, in the local malls. I had no choice but to do that. And I had a security team with me of Tajiks, and I trusted them. And I remember as we were getting ready to go out and do that, I said, we've got to go rehearse our counter ambush drills. And they go, okay, I thought we fight, you run. I'm like, you guys can't shoot as well as me. What makes you think you're going to do the fighting? I'm better at this shit than you are. I said, no, we all fight. We all fight. We all go in, we go out together, and we're going to charge these things. I'm not afraid to do this. And we'd go and do these drills. And it never occurred to me that acting like a Marine amongst these guys would separate me from the other Westerners. It never occurred to me. If you were in my position, I did what you would do. I thought everybody would do what you and I would do. But nobody did what you and I did. Nobody that I know of. Yeah, I'm sure there were, but I don't know them. And so it was the challenges I had were more smuggling booze back to Jalalabad was often a challenge. I had I don't know. You had to be in the gray area though. For instance, I don't know how much concrete I used to build those check dams, but it was tons. Okay, they come in 50-pound bags of concrete. USAID said I cannot use concrete from Iran, that I must import it from Pakistan. I'm building this stuff on the border with Iran. I'm on the Iranian border.
That's stupid,
Yeah. Well, how much do you think it's going to cost to get a 50-pound bag of cement through all the daggone drama on the ring road all the way down into Zaranj? How much do you think that cement's going to cost? So I explained to the governor. No, I didn't explain to him. My provincial manager explained to me, this will cause a bloodbath as people try to get that $35 and figure out how they're going to make money. He goes, because what they're going to do is they're going to get truckloads of bags that say made in Pakistan, and they're just going to take the Iranian cement they can get for $5, fill up those bags. He said, there's got to be a way to manage this. And I said, well, I can tell you right now, I think I know what you're saying, and I can't manage that. So we went to Governor Berhowie, and I said, I can't manage this. I don't want to know if this is what you're going to do, but I highly recommend you do it because this is bullshit. What they're doing. So that's what we did. So stuff like that, I didn't like. I was forced to intercede on Afghans' behalf several times. Once with the current commandant over some really ridiculous nonsense, and I found it very challenging because my loyalties were with them. I mean, not ever against the Marine or the United States. I mean, never that. But I was on their side of this argument because what they were being asked to do and what they were being treated was bullshit. And so.
Well, what about like challenges like patience? I mean, I'm just thinking for the future when you go into a new culture and you don't have the infrastructure and you're essentially a one-man show. Yeah, I mean, you've got the financial resources, but how important is patience?
It was not hard for me because I was by myself, and it's very hard to get impatient and angry with a bunch of armed dudes who can't even, because I could do Dari pretty well, but not Pashto that well.
Yeah.
I was forced to be patient, and I'm not a patient man. It's a trait I picked up over there. What I became impatient with was dealing with the bureaucracy to the point of belligerence, quite frankly. And that's not a helpful attitude. This is not something I'm bragging about because, I just wanted to, I thought it was the right thing to do. It was the wrong thing to do. I did not exercise the tact and patience with the American bureaucracy that I had been taught in the Marine Corps, which
Right.
and taught and justifiably so. And that probably had a negative impact on that probably cost me money, not me money,
Yeah.
program money. I would have been able probably to do twice as much and got twice as much money had I been willing to play ball with the bureaucracy. But I would tell them straight to their face, "Hey man, I want nothing to do with you guys." I told my representative at the last ago, I said, "Look, I'm not coming here anymore. You people are crazy." And yeah, it was that was the most disappointing part. So I remember arriving in Afghanistan, talking to some very senior religious guy, and I forget why I was talking to him, but I got a picture with him, and I remember talking to this guy, and I thought he was like one of the smartest guys I ever met. And I told him, I said, I can guarantee you, we're going to get the infrastructure in this country back up and running in no time. We did this in Germany. It's going to be, I'm going to say, a naive Kool-Aid drinker. And he told me at the time, he goes, the infrastructure isn't the issue.
Yeah.
It's the people is the issue. And the people are the ones that are in need of rehabilitation. The infrastructure will take care of itself. You need to concentrate on the people. No idea what he's talking about then. Good idea what he's talking about now. But I remember feeling a little bit embarrassed. I'm like, nah, but we'll get a handle on all this. And as I watched us flailing and failing, and it became more and more evident to us that we were going to lose and that we were doing the wrong thing. And when I started taking the Afghan side in disputes, it was
You're going native then, huh?
hard. Yeah, it's it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I love this country. I respected guys like John Kelly and John Allen and Jim Mattis. Thought the sun
Right.
rose and set on them. And I saw them as flawed human beings because I mean, Allen talked to me at length when he was assigned over there. Didn't listen to a word I said, but at least gave me the courtesy of a hearing. And it was it was it was it was heartbreaking because I returned to a country disillusioned and and angry. God, I was angry,
Yeah.
but I've gotten better. I've gotten better since, but it was hard.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
tough, isn't it? I mean, the part of the problem is when you're on the ground so long, 7 years, you see things quite differently.
Mhm.
And I remember sitting in Kabul at a brief, and some general spouting off, and I'm not going to take names, but so I raised my hand and I said, so have you been down there? And he's like, no. So I said, quite frankly, it's not going to work because what you're saying is completely 180 degrees opposite of what reality on the ground is. Now, on paper, what you're saying sounds really good, but you're just spinning your wheels, and you're going to get a bunch of people killed for no reason.
Mhm.
And so he kind of pushes back at me, and you know me. I mean, you can poke me
No.
once, you ain't gonna poke me twice. So
Mhm.
I kind of let loose. I said, "You have no freaking idea what you're talking about, and you're wasting my time, and you're wasting everybody's time here, and you like to hear yourself talk." And I got up and I left. So Sergeant Major came running out and said, he's sticking up for his general. I get it. He's like, you
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
talk to a general officer like that. And I said, I just did.
Yeah.
you know,
That's
and
it.
I and I walked off. The point being is a lot of these guys are there for 6 months, 9 months, or a year, and that's their focus. I need to survive this phase of my life and get back to the States with my medal and my next promotion or my next job. That's what they're focused on. You
Mhm.
made a commitment there with the Afghans and gave 7 years of your life. So you
Yeah.
had
And
equity in it, right?
I didn't have a problem there. Every day I felt like I was making a difference in doing something important. And yeah, yeah. So
Sure.
it wasn't like I was, but I didn't stay 7 straight years.
Yeah.
But I would make my 11 out of 12 months so I could get the tax break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm talking about emotionally you're invested, right? So I mean,
Oh,
that 1 month
completely
when you're
invested.
back home, you're still back in Afghanistan emotionally, right? Mentally.
Oh, that 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 evacuation from Kabul. I don't think I slept. I had so many people. I was trying to maneuver to get them there. I had so many people. I was trying to get the people inside. I had a couple guys inside the operation. I'm like trying to get them connected to get them out.
Yeah.
And I only got one family, one out of 40.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sad, you know. I mean, I still got people over there that I'm still trying to get out, you know. And
I do too. Don't we all?
yeah,
Yeah.
we just
Yeah.
got to be patient, and hopefully, I don't think, you know, I mean, they're not coming to the United States given the current circumstances. That's a damn shame.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you know, nonetheless, I mean, so Afghanistan is a tough place. It grows on you. That's the whole thing. You know, that's one of the challenges. How do you keep yourself, and you need to create walls amongst yourself to so it doesn't grow on you, right? I mean, that's the
Mhm.
whole issue with Afghanistan, and that's why I'm saying we're going to be back there one day. Maybe
Oh, I
you know,
don't doubt that.
you know, it'll be in our lifetime. You wait and see. Because something's going to happen. Well, the part that I think we missed, the challenges, is we misread the situation. And
We did.
if you look at, you know, so I was one of the first people to go in the southern part of Afghanistan when, you know, the
Mhm.
special forces were coming from the north. We went in the south, and things were different. You know, that RSO that you're talking about that wasn't willing to help you, didn't care, but didn't want to build teams for success. When the operation first started out, it was a bunch of, you know, staff NCOs, junior officers, majors, lieutenant colonels, and a colonel. Colonel was a senior man. Mulholland, I believe, was his name, with special forces. We kind of just put all this thing together, and it didn't matter who you were. We would help each other out.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like these birds of a feather sort of flying together, you know, and we'd figure it out. And things went really smooth. And as soon as they started building these headquarters with general officers and building these fiefdoms, you know, these rice bowls, that's when problems started. And I remember talking to, you know, because people used to always ask me to give them advice and my cultural and all that expertise bullshit.
Mhm.
And I remember sitting there talking to a group of general officers, and you know, not one of them could speak a language. Now, we'd been there 20 years, and how many Pashto classes did we teach? Zero. You know, we did contract Pashto. Uh, but even to this day, if you look at the curricula, that the documents that you sent me,
Mhm.
only Arabic is offered at the Naval Academy, right?
Mhm.
And that's good. I mean, that's a step forward. But why can't we offer Pashto? Why can't we offer Mandarin? You know, why can't we offer Korean? Why can't we offer Russian? Those are probably the critical languages, right? And
I would say Dari was more useful than Pashto only because it sounds similar to. I
Farsi.
think if you're a Dari speaker, you can get by in India, but not a Pashto. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I mean, they're all the
It's
base
similar to
languages.
Urdu.
The base language is
Yeah.
the same, but I think in Afghanistan, Pashto was a critical language. The reason being is because that's where the problems was, right?
Yeah. No.
So,
Well, I would agree with that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you had to befriend the Pashtuns, right? So that was the whole issue with that.
Yeah. It makes life a lot easier when they're your friends. That's true.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Then they trust you. There's trust there. So I think at the
Mhm.
end of the day, you know, and if I was, you know, coming out of the Marine Corps for a day, I wouldn't last more than that. I would mandate that you don't become a field grade officer unless you can speak a language. I don't give a shit if you've got your master's degree for some bullshit military school, but you have to be able to speak a foreign language. And I
Yeah.
think that's so important because it just opens up your brain, right? And because then you learn the culture as well. And we need officers that can get out there in the community, a la like yourself, and function successfully.
Mhm.
What happens is our officers, you know, and Alan's a good guy. I mean, he's an enlightened individual. Don't get me wrong, but they shield themselves behind these Texas barriers, right? And these
And they
guard.
put a lot of and their cultural advisors, whoever they may be, have an overweighted influence on them,
Yes,
much grossly
yes.
overweighted
And,
because
and you know, and I had such a problem when I was a battalion commander. I hired all my Terps locally from Kandahar, knowing I'm going to be operating in a Pashtun area. So I wanted Pashtun speakers that were ethnically from that area. They were trusted
Mhm.
by the locals, and they could give us better advice. And what the MU did was their contract Terps were non-Pashtuns, you know, from up north, Tajiks, Hazarans, you know, a couple of Uzbeks. And those guys, one, they're scared shit to be in a Pashtun area. Number two, the Pashtuns don't trust them, right? And that was a big, big disconnect. And I would sit there and listen to the conversations, and I'm thinking, holy shit, man, this guy's off track. You know, one, he's not translating right. Number two is he's just giving bad advice because he doesn't understand the culture and those types of issues. And then, you know, as you fast forward, then the Afghan National Army that we try to build in our image, huge mistake. You know, we wanted this homogeneous army that DEI, that's where DEI first started. You know, it's going to be diverse army throughout Afghanistan. We're going to bring these people in. It didn't work. And then you look across the border in Pakistan where they've got regional regiments. You've got the Punjab regiment, you've got the Sindh regiment, you've got the Baloch regiment, you've got the Frontier regiment, because they recruit from the local people and they're accepted. So these lessons we didn't learn. And our biggest problem was we just thought we knew more than we really did. That was the big issue, I think. And and it's unfortunate because if we had, you know, sent in people in there that were willing to be out there with the Afghans and willing to work with them at ground zero, and that's where the difference was. And I think that's what that religious person was trying to tell you, is work with the people, not the infrastructure.
I did not know Dory at that time, and I think so. I had two Terps that went with me the entire time I was there, both Hazara from Ghazni, one of whom looked Pashto, both spoke Pashto.
Right.
One could easily pass as a Pashto, and he did because his wife was in Quetta. His wife and kids were in Quetta, because obviously they weren't living in Ghazni anymore.
Yeah.
So that was how I compensated for not knowing the language that well. Is I had two with me, because interpreting for somebody like me who's running his mouth all the time is exhausting.
Yeah.
So I would switch him out. And of course, when in the Helmand, I couldn't bring JD to the Helmand because he books Hazara, so that was not going to work.
Yeah.
But I wasn't going to go down to Helmand and start working with dudes I don't even know or trust.
Right.
So I brought my own guy with me. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's fair. And the other thing you got to remember, at the end of the day, you're a guest, right? So they're going to treat you much differently, with reverence, with the incredible amount of hospitality, and things of that nature.
Yeah, your safety's assured. Your safety's assured if you're invited.
I mean, they would rather die than see you get hurt. I mean, that's the bottom line, you know.
I slept like a baby in those local compounds. I wasn't worried about anything happening to me. I knew I was safe. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're you know, in the Pashtunwali culture, you know, there's a code when somebody, it doesn't matter even if your enemy, if your enemy is traveling through, you still have to treat him as a guest, right? He eats out of your plate, he sleeps in your bed, and you know, he gets priority, and he gets safety. That's the whole thing. You'll protect him as long as, you know, and that's part of the hospitality in Afghanistan that we never really kind of understood how to capitalize on it, right? And what happened was we drove this big wedge, and we can have this maybe for a later episode, talk about, you know, what happened is because, you know, how in the Marine Corps drill and ceremonies manual, you know, you step off, everybody steps off with your left foot, everybody, right? So the first step is important, right? Because that sets the cadence and all that stuff.
Right.
And I think our first step in Afghanistan, we stepped off with the right foot, and it was actually the wrong foot, right? And that's what happened. Because the relationships that we developed with these warlords and whatnot, and it just alienated the population, you know, especially down in the villages.
I got to write that down. Stepped off with the right foot, which was the wrong foot. I like that.
Yeah, yeah.
You should be a writer.
I am writing.
I know.
I am. I am. I'm in the middle of writing my book right now. So, you know, so in Afghanistan, the troops were the Afghans, right? And they're good leaders like yourself that gave a shit. And they saw the passion in you, and that this guy is spending 11 months with us, goes on for 1 month, and he's trying to make a difference, you know, right or wrong. At least he's trying. And that carries a lot of water at the end of the day. You know, so when the canal isn't open because somebody's taking water, it's been diverted somewhere, or KADG Dam is not, you know, the flow isn't going on. They understand that. They get it, because that's, you know, it happens. It happens all the time in Afghanistan. But at the end of the day, what they want is, you know, and I think what that religious person was trying to tell you is, in a way, that it's all about the people. The people need leadership. That was the absent part, because Afghanistan was lacking that, right? All these warlords, all these governors, all these people were taking a cut, and the rural people especially saw this, that they weren't working in their best interest. And On the other side, the Taliban was working in their best interest. If they had a land dispute or something, they'd go to the mullahs, and the mullahs would sort it out for them, and in one sitting, where the courts would.
Government officials use the Taliban courts to
Yes,
adjudicate land
yes,
disputes.
yes, because there's honesty there, and that's the leadership that they're looking for from America. But America came in with a flood of money that added to the corruption, and it didn't go the way that we wanted to. And I'll tell you what, I think we could have handled Afghanistan for less than $1 billion a year, less than $1 billion,
easily, because they couldn't absorb more than that. The country's the economy was not capable of absorbing that much money unless it was stealing it.
Yeah.
And I mean they're not inherently dishonest people, but they're not stupid people either,
You can make them.
Some of them probably.
You can make anybody. I'll tell you this much: you can make any human being dishonest. There's probably in the history of humanity, there's probably been a handful of people that haven't been dishonest, right? But the rest of them, everybody has a price. Everybody does,
right?
And it may be whatever the price. And Jeffrey Epstein's a great example of that, right? What's your price at the end of the day, And so if you give everybody their drug of choice, they will take it, whatever that may be. So my point is, and we came in there with guns blazing that, hey, we're going to fix this place. We know how to do it, blah, blah, blah. And they're sort of looking at us like, you guys are morons, And it was great to read in one of your articles where you're talking about you're giving the women beauty kits with sewing machines, right?
Oh,
that thing that you wrote.
It was we had a women's empowerment training in Zaranj.
Right.
Now, Zaranj is on the border with Iran. Women wear the chador, not the burqa.
Yeah.
Working outside the home, culturally accepted amongst the Baluch. So this is all good. Rug weaving, that rug right there, they weaved a rug of me. Rug weaving, beauty shop, and looms. And we did looms. And the year that Hillary Clinton said, we will not forget you, they cut that program. Because they said, no, we're not doing that anymore. We're doing capacity building.
Yeah.
So the money that would have gone into that went into a sports stadium the next year.
Yeah, you know what I used to give out as bonuses in Afghanistan? Because you give somebody $50 or $100, that money they're going to blow away, right? It'll be gone.
Oh, no, that's a big deal.
Yeah. You know what I used to do? A bicycle.
That's smart. That's smart.
I got a container of bicycles from China, and I think they costed like $50 a pop, right?
Yeah.
And the reason I gave bicycles was because I was talking to local Afghans. They're telling me it takes them an hour to an hour and a half to walk from work. These guys get up at 4 a.m. to get to work, right? And then they got to go home at night. So they're literally walking. So I was thinking, you know what? The hard workers, I'll start giving, as bonuses, I'll start giving them a bicycle. They absolutely loved it because it cut down their transit time to half an hour, right? So then I started thinking, maybe I'm onto something. How can I tangibly improve their lives at the people level? So the next set of bonuses, I got sewing machines. So when we had that, employee of the month, of what have you, handed him a sewing, and the guy looked at it as like, where's my bicycle at? I said, well, you're not getting a bicycle, you're getting a sewing machine. Well, I want a bicycle. I said, I'm not giving you a bicycle. Take the damn sewing machine. Take it home. He goes, what am I going to do with it? I said, you're not going to do anything with it. Your wife will figure it out. Let her have it. And you know what the wife did? Over time, she learned how to sew. And over time, she started her own little micro business, making clothes for the neighborhood, and she's generating a small income, so these small things add up over, successes add up into something big. And that we never had that thinking. I had an idea. It was loony bins. People thought I was absolutely nuts. And this is back in 2001. Afghanistan, like you said, you had a generator issue, right? So at that time in 2001, when we did the initial energy feasibility study, the total requirement was 10 megawatts across the country. 10 megawatts is absolutely, it's nothing, At my compound, I had 3.5 megawatts of generated power. So I came up with the idea that let's put a small nuclear power plant at Bagram.
Would have worked.
Yeah, because then the problem is just TDS, right? Transmission distribution system.
Yeah.
And so people thought I was nuts. I said, we're going to be here for 40 years. And we can safeguard it, right? We can fuel it. We can safeguard it. It's an energy plant. They're bathtub-sized units. They're not massive, right? And it'll be a Bagram, and we can protect it. And we can provide. So, but we didn't want to do that. Rather, these guys, the contract officers and stuff, wanted to give them big generators, which they couldn't maintain. They couldn't get the spare parts. They couldn't get the glow plugs, all that stuff. And then we had to get all the diesel shipped in from Pakistan, right? Now think about this. So along the way, I know how these people operate. So along the way, what they're doing is they're emptying the truck out of the diesel, right? Because the way you measure it, you put a stick down the top. It's a measuring rod, right? A stick,
right.
A wooden ruler, basically, a tall ruler. They open the top, they put it down, and wherever the mark is, that's how much fuel you got. It tells you, right? These guys are very shrewd. So they're taking the diesel out. On the bottom of the truck, they're putting in sludge, tar. Tar is dense, so that it goes up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the problem is the tar gets into the diesel. So when we're offloading the diesel, given to the military, all the Humvees are getting full of sludge, and they ain't working. And it took them months to figure out what the hell was going on with the fuel, right? So that was one part of it. The second part is to bring the fuel, Company X has got the contract for the fuel. Company X can't get it down to Kandahar or Kabul because the Taliban control the roads. So Company X says, okay, we'll give you a cut. Don't attack our trucks. Let them go through, and we'll give you some money. So Company X starts paying off the Taliban. Taliban are making money off this contract. It may be, whatever the security costs are, 15 or 20%, whatever is added to the contract. They're making a killing off of it. So this is great. It's a money-making enterprise. And once in a while, they'll blow up a truck just to keep the income going. So there's all sorts of scams that were going on. I mean, I could sit here, spend half a day, just write a book on Afghan scams. But we enabled all that.
We did. I had a side hustle, which was investigating tanker attacks between Torkham and Jalalabad.
Yeah.
And invariably, I'd find the tanker, I'd take a picture of it where you could see where the nose cone from the RPG exited the tanker because it's empty, So you could see, okay, got hit here. Here's the nose cone imprint when it goes straight through. This thing was emptied, and then it was attacked. Every one of them was emptied and attacked. Suddenly that stopped in 2011. Why do you think that was? Well, you just said that's why.
Yeah.
You just said why it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was business disputes. That was just business disputes.
Absolutely. People have forgotten, Afghanistan is and the reason I say we're going back is because it's geographical location.
Yeah.
Right. I'll give you an example. The reason Dubai is so important is not because some magic. Yeah, they've got great leadership and stuff. It's because of its geographic location. That airport is critical because if you go back in time, when planes would take off from India to go to the colonial headquarters in Europe, they would have to land in Dubai to refuel. Back then it was Sharjah. They would land in Sharjah. I remember as a kid, you'd land in Sharjah, they'd come out with the truck and the stick thing in the airplane and refuel us. And then you'd see a Bedouin or in those days roll out a cart with these cheap watches and stuff duty free. That's how the concept started. And the next stop would be Turkey, and then you go off to Europe, right? The refueling stops. So it was on a route, on an air route. Afghanistan is on a caravan route through the silk and the spice routes, right? When they're coming from China or India, they will all go through Afghanistan. And what happened was, because they're going through Afghanistan, they would get robbed every time by my ancestors. They're Afridis. That's what they do. They rob the caravans. If you didn't pay them, they take your shit.
Yeah,
that's what happened.
I'm familiar with the Afridis.
Yeah. So, so Afghanistan to this day is part of the trade routes, and we just don't seem to understand it. And we built all these roads and stuff that eventually are going to open up. And China is building a CPAC highway system. Afghanistan's linked into it. And people just got tired of getting robbed. So, and I'll tell you this much, in Khan's analysis of history, one of the reasons America was founded was because of Afghanistan. Now, you think I'm way out there, but let me explain it to you. And I think that viewers might even also enjoy it. And the reason being is when these caravans were going through and getting robbed, people got tired of it. Then all of a sudden this dude, by the name of Christopher Columbus says, oh, I think we should find a sea route. We can save a lot of money. So Queen Elizabeth and King Fernandez, they finance him, his expedition. He takes off heading west. and stumbles across, which today modern day Dominican Republic sees brown-skinned people, and he doesn't have a GPS, he doesn't have anything. There's no satellites. He thinks he's in India, right? That's where the term American Indians comes from, right? So he's in India. Until they find out, when they land on the mainland, like, shit, this place is just full of forest, and yeah, there's brown-skinned people here, but it's just full of wildlife, right? And then the colonists come in and they start, rummaging through the area, taking things over. So the point being is the impetus was for that expedition to be funded was to find a sea route to avoid the land route and being robbed by the Taliban and their ancestors. So that's why Afghanistan will always be a critical place, because of its geographic location. It's really that simple. IPB on a strategic level. That's where we are.
Concur, sir.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so this is the first episode that we'll do with Tim Lynch, and we're going to do many more based on the conversations we have, and it's a free flow type conversation, and we'll see how it goes. And I really appreciate your time, Tim. We've been at it for about 2 hours. I'll try to go through it and bring it all together.
I enjoy talking with you. I really do. And I promised my wife we wouldn't do this, but I don't think she's going to mind. I have a great time.
Yeah, this is great. Bring her on too next time. That's all right.
All right.
But I appreciate your time. I know it takes a lot of time to get through all this stuff. So this is all good. And
I am enjoying it, and I just love talking with you again, man. It's good to see you.
In the meantime, enjoy your week. I appreciate your time, and thanks for supporting this channel, brother. God bless.